what you're exactly going to speak about today. I'm really curious. Just recently heard also an awesome talk from you at ETH Denver. I was just checking in virtually. So yeah, maybe we first start with the talk and then we keep growing.
Sure. I mean, do you want to just give me a down like expectations, like how long do I have exactly? And are you thinking slides or do you, honestly, I almost thought this was a panel, but don't worry, I have like 4
It
talks.
is. It is a panel. There's a panel in half an hour.
Okay, cool.
What you're exactly going to speak about today? I'm really curious. Just recently heard also an awesome talk from you at ETH Denver. I was just checking.
Yeah, that's what I would definitely that's what I would definitely want to give the talk on, is really this concept of regen economies and how we can use them to create Schelling points around public goods. That's this one I actually gave at Schelling point, but I'm really excited to give a revamp to it.
That would be awesome. I think that would be the best way to start, and then we can continue from there. It's yeah, you got so many cool talks, man. It's hard to choose from which talk.
Oh no, I'm in a new computer. I have to set up my it won't let me share screen.
Oh, I know this feeling. That I was there like many times. I mean, it's like we don't need to necessarily use slides. We can.
I mean, I'm definitely down for that. I would rather just have a conversation with you, Gregor. That's my favorite.
Awesome. Then let's do it like this. Let's kick it. So
yeah.
Well, then I gotta start with that. It's like you dropped like a bombshell of a teaser. In a way. At ETH Denver, there's like this $10.5 trillion opportunity in the DAO, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think people get so focused on business models, and they expect there to be revenue around these things. And there is so much value that can't be captured by revenue. And this value currently is being captured by governments and nonprofits because they don't have revenue models. But their systems suck, right? So governments, like the US government alone, just the US government, not talking all the other nations in the world, right? The US government alone last year spent $10 trillion. They spent, this is not like a market cap. They spent $10 trillion trying to fund public goods, right? And for context, $10 trillion in spending is 5 times the total crypto market cap, right? This is a huge opportunity, and this was the original dream of crypto, at least for me, and when I came into space in 2013, was how do we like use this to replace antiquated structures that we use for coordinating things that we need, right? Especially around governments, the crypto anarchist dream.
Exactly, yeah. So
yeah. And the thing about it is that we forget that we can have the crypto anarchist dream and we can make money at the same time. We can make the world a better place. We can solve problems better than governments with good incentive structures, and people will pay us to do it. This is where it gets crazy, because like the $10 trillion for that government spend, that's not the first step. Really, the first step, in my opinion, is the $500 million in donations this is from the US alone. This is not the rest of the world. And the US is, of course, the superstar in donations because their governments kind of suck at providing that value. Other like Europe provides a lot of value to its citizens.
But this, if I can jump in, this is actually really interesting. You say donations are important because the governments don't provide value, but at the same time you mentioned 10.5 trillion is being spent. So there is some intent, but it's like, okay, that spending happens and what? It just disappears or what? And
that's the thing. It's just burned, right? They just spend the money and it's burned and it's gone. And I believe with Web3 tooling, we can actually capture that value. And with DAOs specifically, not only can we capture the value, but we can give more voice to people that are not controlled by capital, the people who are actually on the ground. So in this $10.5 trillion, $10 trillion is by federal, state, and local governments. Like, we forget about the local governments, right, that are spending buttloads of cash on this stuff. But there's also nonprofits, right, who are spending $500 billion, excuse me, $500 billion every year just in the US alone to provide value to society. Now, governments, they have a decent model, right? That's why they can get $10 trillion, because they basically say, give us your money or we'll take your house. And then people give them their money, right? Because they want to participate in society. And this allows them to have, through coercive means, great funding, right? Nonprofits, though, they don't have that. They're literally just begging. Like, they're just begging for money and saying, please help us help everybody, you know? And I think that's where we start. And this has been the strategy of Giveth for the last 5 years, is we can create structures. And even if we create a DAO where you are creating like an investment in a nonprofit cause, and the people who are investing in that DAO lose money, they're still better off than donations on the financial realm, right? Like, if you have two nonprofits, you have a nonprofit who's saying, donate to me, and you have a DAO who's saying, invest in me. Even if the DAO loses money, you're going to be better than donating to a nonprofit, given everything else is the same, just in this financial dimension. And so I believe firmly that we can create DAOs that are kind of like using this play to earn model, at least that's the current verbiage that we're working with, that are effectively economic games, creating economic games around nonprofit causes, so that when you help the homeless in various ways, you're earning points, right? And what's really cool is with these points, right, they can be transferable and monetary, but they can also be reputational. And that's where things get really exciting, because right now in the nonprofit space and in the government space, it's completely capital controlled. Like, if a donor says, I will give you $10,000 for this work, then the nonprofit's like, okay, well, we will do that work now. Thank you, sir. You know? And it doesn't matter if it's a good idea, because the donors say it and that's what they want their money to, but the donors don't have all the information. They're not on the ground. They're working their other jobs, selling out to some other horrible corporation or whatever, feel guilty. And then so they're donating to a cause that they want. But just in the structure of the system, they really don't have the ability, the perspective to say what is actually going to have impact. But the people on the ground, they know, right? If they could earn reputation and they could have a voice, and that donation instead was the person who donates should still get a voice, of course, but we need to balance labor, capital, and expertise as inputs and give voice to all three factors. And in the current public goods sector, it is all capital that gets the voice. And so we're just not effective. I mean, there's various other reasons why we're not effective, but this is the big one. And if we can, with these play to earn type models, and these, I like to just call them economic games, where we're creating point systems for doing good work, we can give the people on the ground a voice. They can earn their voice. And then with that voice, they can actually innovate. And that's the other big thing, that if we create a financial upside for supporting public goods, then entrepreneurs can come in and they can actually be rewarded for innovation in the public goods sector, which there hasn't been any ever, as far as I can tell. You know, like, so innovation is slow.
So that also, you know, it's like, I mean, actually, there's so much to unpack what you just said here. You know, it's like, first, exactly this. It's I have a problem with charities. It's like, I've been, in a way, you know, and you pointed out charities as the first maybe front, you know, to address. It's like, way ago, I even worked with one charity. I helped them produce a TV show, etc. Like, it was like being part of the team. And for me, there was like this realization and the shock where I realized this charity spends more than 70% of the funds raised on themselves, to do stuff. And then basically when I was in Africa, I was told by the local village chiefs back there, just, walking around being noisy and stuff. So it's like the distribution on the ground, even of the remaining 30% is in many cases quite dodgy and shady. It's like the village chief gets the bulk and then does like, oh, no, you've been nice this week, so you get something, and I think this is already the first step. What I like with Give It has like this really extraordinary claim that all the funds go to the recipient, right? All what you basically raise, what is being given, goes for the cause. It's maybe can you go maybe a bit deeper into this? How does it work? It's like, because it seems like the laws of physics don't play along with that claim.
This is the magic of economic models. So beyond just 100. So I mean, 100% on Giveth, 100% of the funds go to the projects. Now the projects, in the end, like we've created options for traceable donations through Giveth Trace, which of course very well, as Data Fund has been killing it on Giveth Trace. However, we really need to revamp that system and reintegrate it with what has been launched now. And what we have right now is by far the best donation platform in the world, objectively, because 100% of the donations go to the nonprofits, and we pay the donors to donate. And this is where I say the economic models are magical, because we can actually create an economic model as opposed to a business model. Whereas most donation platforms are in the space of like, well, we have to deal with revenue. We have to collect money from customers and then build that money up and spend less than we collect. And then, hey, we make money and we're sustainable, regenerative. With an economic model, you have to deal with supply and demand of the issuance of a token. So you issue a token, but you have to balance your issuance with demand for the token. And it's like an extra dimension up, right? It's like, instead of position, velocity, or instead of velocity, acceleration. And that's where you're in this realm of like, how do we deal with the flows of the issuance of the token and demand for the token and make sure that is balanced. And what's really cool with economic models is that you add an extra benefit of the token, which is speculation, and people can start to allocate their capital into this system. So a lot of people have a lot of excess capital, and they're like, what do I do with it? Well, I can put it into Microsoft stock or Amazon stock, right? And this is their options. Like, I can hold Bitcoin, right? These are their options. They want to hold their capital somewhere. But what if we gave them the options of holding capital instead of Amazon in an organization that's trying to save the Amazon, right? Like, how many people would like to see their capital growth potential alongside, making the world a better place, right? They could just, and that's what Giveth hopes to achieve right now. Like right now, we have the best donation platform in the world. 100% of the donations go to the nonprofit, and we literally pay you to donate, right? And so now after that step, what we want to do next, and the total vision of Giveth is to be effectively almost like a stock market for impact investments, where any project who wants to go through our system, where we ramp them up to become a DAO for good, they will eventually have their own opportunity where people can allocate capital behind their project and have upside potential, right? And that's where things get really interesting, where we can tap into this global financial market and actually bring capital that's sitting in stupid companies that people don't even care about, and start allowing that capital to sit and work within the public good space.
Well, I mean, it's like we said many times that cryptography is this magic thing. It's like things are just happening, and then something pops out, and it's what it was supposed to be. But this seems like proper magic on this society level. It's like how to use the power of the economics. I mean, in a way, what you're making, it's like you're really making it hard for people to have an excuse to not donate.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like with this system, if I ask myself, it's like, and somebody says, like, I ask them, like, are you donating? And they're like, no. And I'm like, what's your excuse? What can they say? So, like disarming them.
For the first time ever with Giveth, donations have upside. If you donate to Giveth right now, we give away up to 1 million give tokens every 2 weeks, right? And we cap the rewards for donors at 75% of their donation. So, but that 75% is streamed over 5 years. But here's the thing, right? If right now we're not even close to giving away 1 million tokens every 2 weeks. There's just, it's been a little bit berry in the crypto market. So people don't donate when they're losing money. But in this next bull cycle, we'll see if this is true. But right now, you can pretty much rely on getting 75% of your donation back in give tokens. And those give tokens will be streamed to you over 5 years. And so for the first time ever, donations have an upside. If you donate $100, you're going to get $75 worth of give tokens at the price at the end of the round, right? Streamed to you over 5 years. And if the the price of give tokens goes up, you actually make more money than you donated. And 100% of the donation just went to the nonprofit. I mean, this is insane. And this is what we want. This is really the vision of Giveth, is that nonprofits and public services are adding value to society. That value should be captured by the organizations. The people who are participating in creating that value should be able to be rewarded for that.
Yes, where can I sign? I mean, I already signed in a way through MetaMask. So it's just maybe, it's like thinking of, let's now imagine Giveth becomes widely used, it becomes public utility. But wouldn't then be there like this other problem of too much noise? I come to Giveth, and where do I donate? What do I do? Don't I get then this decision paralysis?
Yes, curation is a serious problem, right? And the next big feature that we're adding to the platform is to address curation. We call it Give Power. And so Give token holders will be able to stake their Give tokens behind projects, and that will help curate them on the platform. But that's just one of many inputs into this curation system. We also want to have a team of experts that are kind of behind the scenes rating the different projects and understanding what kind of impact they have. And for instance, right now our curation is very centralized. We want to decentralize that and create multiple systems for this. But with this crisis that's happening in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine projects had a huge there was a huge demand for this. And right now in our system, we just had to go behind the scenes and tweak some numbers so that the project's at the top. And that's gross to me. That's not decentralized, right? So we need to, our first step is, how do we allow Give token holders to have input? And how do we also allow qualitative, expertise, like qualitative measurement through expertise as well, to be an input into this, so that we can start curating projects on the platform a little bit better. But in the end, honestly, I feel like the nonprofits themselves, we try to create, some places for them to advertise effectively. We have a Meet the Makers podcast about a week ago, and we regularly tweet different projects that are succeeding on the platform. But in the end, we still have this issue that the projects themselves have to do their own advertising a little bit, and they have to send out the tweets and tell their users, hey, you could donate to Giveth and we get 100% of the money, and you actually get Give tokens on top. So, and so building the resources for them to just do their own promotion is the short-term fix. The medium-term fix is the Give Power system. And then the long-term fix, I don't know. We will see how curation Well,
I ask also because of my curiosity. It's like I know that you've been also involved with conviction voting.
yeah.
So I don't know what's I wasn't able to I'm not able to follow happenings there, but was just wondering if you are also looking at conviction voting and somehow merging it also with
Yeah.
Give It or
This give power system with the expertise,
Mhm.
and there will be a time component. I wouldn't call it following the conviction voting model, but it will have some inspiration there. But conviction voting is especially good for allocating funds, a scarce amount of funds between competing options, right? So the current structure of conviction voting we use for how do we fund, which projects do we fund? Do we do this token swap? Do we do this like elk farm or whatever, different projects might, be competing for our scarce amount of funds that we have in our DAO pool. Oh, it's not that scarce. We have a lot of money in our DAO, which is amazing. But because for the first Give It for 5 years has been running on nothing, and
yes, yes,
and then all of
I
a sudden
know.
we have 30
It has
million.
been running on love and power. It has been running on total blur, It's so
Yeah. And yeah, love and appreciation has gotten us very far, right? But now we're here in a place where we actually have $30 million sitting in our DAO. And now how do we spend it? Well, it's really cool. Anyone can propose like an idea. We propose it on the forum first. We have 5 days of advice process. And then hopefully some ideas were integrated from feedback, and then they propose on the gardens. And the way the voting works in conviction voting is that when you support something with your tokens, that starts accumulating weight. So again, it's more of a velocity type thing rather than just like, oh, boom, your votes count towards that thing. There's no, it's not time limited. So it's not like, oh, you have 7 days to get everyone around to vote for this thing. It's really like you put out the proposal, and as it kind of self curates, as it gets to be the best proposal on the platform, the people who are actively voting will allocate their tokens there, and you can kind of see when it's going to pass. And so it's kind of like, it's not as much as of a like, does this have enough tokens to pass, but it's really have enough tokens been sitting behind this proposal for long enough for it to pass. And
I didn't know that Give It has its own DAO also. I thought just
yeah.
the other. Wow, that's cool. I gotta check it out. Yeah.
No, I mean, this is the thing. Our launch, man, I can't believe how well our launch went, considering how many things we launched. We launched the conviction voting gardens. We launched the Give Backs program for donations on the platform. We launched the Give Farm, and our farming has insane APR, like 200% just for staking Give tokens. And then like, if you want to actually provide liquidity, it's like 700 to 700% ish, ranging depending on which pools you pick. So but the way we do this is because we don't just give liquid tokens, right? We want to create a system where people care about the future value of Give It. So we also launched the Give Stream. And the Give Stream is this kind of universal unlock. So anyone who participates in the economic game of Give It, right? They don't get 100% liquid tokens. They get, right now it's about 13% of their tokens are liquid, and then 87% of their tokens are streamed over the next 4 years and 9 months, because we launched in December. So it's this thing where it's unlocking the same for everyone. And whether you're participating in givebacks, you're farming, or you're voting in the gardens, or whatever else you're doing, you're earning this some liquid Give tokens and a stream. And it's kind of this, it allows our economy to grow while it's small, with a smaller circulating supply. And it also allows the equivalent of our block rewards to go to everyone who participated, as opposed to just like this, like, hey, burn a lot of electricity and maybe you'll win the lottery. It's really like, hey, did you participate in Give It? Did you help build the future of giving? Well, then you are earning a stream for the next 5 years. Our issuance will stop after that 5 years, but then, well, if you participated at any point, then you kind of earn the block rewards effectively.
really sounds like a game, you know. I'm listening to you and it sounds like a game, and I'm thinking I should join the DAO and do the proposal that somebody does some really cool graphics to it so that we just skin the whole experience. That yeah, it's like, you know, playing the game of making the world a better place while
Yeah.
earning money. It's like, I mean, it's like a little bit like, I don't know, like listening to some movie script, you know, not that doesn't sound real.
Yeah, but this is the magic. I mean, it doesn't sound real because economics is so foreign, and this idea that we can just issue currency that has value is such a challenge, honestly, to how we are used to thinking in our day-to-day life. You know, there's always this scarcity situation where you have there's 20 eggs and that's all there is, and you have to, you know, who gets which eggs, and there's kind of this balancing equation. But when you can flip it into economic models, is, you know, it's effectively a Ponzi if you're not creating value. But if you actually have intention and execution on creating value, then it's not a Ponzi. You're creating an economic system. You're balancing supply and demand, and you're trying to change the world with this model. And this is the potential we have, because if you're trying to provide value to society, there are no customers. There just isn't. You're otherwise, and this is what's been happening for governments and nonprofits in general, is we try to privatize the product, right? So if we want to protect fish in a bay, then the government creates fishing licenses, right? And they say, actually, the bay is now excludable. We'll come in with guns and check that you have this license so that we can protect the abundance of the fish in the bay. If you want to go to the national park with your car, you have to pay $15 for a license, right? And so they're taking things that were non-excludable and making them excludable. And this is a form of privatization, is like the generic term. And that's okay. It's not a bad solution, but that's the only solution we've had until Web3, because now we can create economic models that don't require exclusion. We can just start rewarding the people who are protecting the fish in the bay, that are managing these processes. And maybe instead of like saying, no, you can't fish, you know, we create, you know, other solutions that keep an abundance of fish, that balances the demand of fishing with the fish that can be there. And we can start creating these economic models where, if people care about fish in the bay, there's these innovative creators that start producing value that make fish in a bay, and you can actually allocate your capital to support that mission. And that's when things start getting exciting, because it's win-win-win all the way around. It doesn't have these restrictions and these requirements of enforcement. Instead, it's like, let's just do positive sum games.
I have so many questions. I have so many questions now to give to you, but it's like time actually flew like this, you know, like the half an hour that we had. And I saw in the meantime, I saw Jack and Matan quickly had like a cameo appearance, and I would just here invite everybody else. So Jack, Matan, Rachel, Ross, who's else? Let me see, Aaron, he didn't join yet. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Matan. Hi, Jack. Hi, Ross. It's amazing company. It's
seriously.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, good.
We can hear you. We can hear you. So I just also pinged Aaron. He's going to, yeah, I guess join us a bit later, but we should just continue. So maybe before we start off again, oh, I see also Aaron is here. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. It's really hello, Aaron.
Hey.
Hello. So it's yeah, I'm just thanking everybody for joining. It feels to me like we sort of have like a dream team of the DAO people in the house, you know. And like when I was trying to figure out how to make the intro. It's like we have so many dimensions, kind of covering from frameworks to the application side, from investing to charity, from just governance of smart contracts up to activism with Sanj. So yes, thank you everybody. Now, in general, we have like a bunch of questions, but at the same time, kind of they go like in the logic of who and who, what, why, where, and how. But I would say let's keep it free flow, like we started with Griff just now. So let's see where it takes us. Maybe before we do kick off, it would be great, I think, to hear like a short intro, or not even short, take your time actually, of what you do, how you ended up in this space. I would say already, once we cover this, those who are new to DAOs will have a very good overview of the space and the happenings. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Matan, are you up for starting?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me here. I'm very excited. I'm always excited when I speak with others, but this specific forum is particularly exciting. So yeah, I started this journey back in 2013, 2014. Back then we had I was a researcher in the academy, researching theoretical physics, and I was also interested for a couple of decades in cooperative structures. And then during my postdoc, I started a venture to build a decentralized ride-sharing application. I think it was one of the two first dApps. We built it actually on the Bitcoin blockchain back then, and it was the same month when Vitalik published his paper, and then all the ideas of DAOs came up. And when I just saw this idea of decentralized autonomous organization, I was really excited. It sort of connected me with 2 decades of thinking about cooperative structures. And after 6 months, I decided to quit the academy and focus full time on DAOs. And that's what I've been doing for the past 8 years, basically building tools and protocols for decentralized autonomous organizations.
Awesome, and you build hell of a lot. It's amazing. I remember the first projects before we even knew each other. That's actually why we got to know each other, because you were working on amazing projects, and it just happened. So great, really, really cool. Maybe who's next? It's really hard to decide. Jack, you're in the middle of my screen, so maybe.
Sure, that you've actually made my life very easy, because I can say everything that Matan just said is basically exactly the same for me, except I wasn't a theoretical physicist. I was a jewelry designer. And I was trying to solve problems of my sort of distributed supply chain, trying to figure out how I could make everybody be able to self-organize without needing me to be sat in the middle pulling all the strings. And I started off also trying to build it on the Bitcoin blockchain, and that was a terrible idea. This just didn't work. And discovered Vitalik's white paper like the same month that it came out. And yeah, everything started to click together. And again, 8 years later, still there, slamming your head against the wall of DAOs.
In fact,
Awesome.
I can mention, in fact, early in 2015, I thought about this meme, decentralized collaborative platform. So I Googled, in quotation mark, decentralized collaborative platform, and there was just one outcome. And it was basically Jack's opening a post on Ethereum forum asking who want to work on the decentralized collaborative platform. A week before I did that, and in a couple of months we met in London.
Yeah.
It was really exciting.
It's interesting, actually. This is a massive aside, but we really weren't the first people thinking about these things, because there were a whole bunch of projects before any of this stuff that was called DAOs that were trying to do the same kinds of things, but the world just really wasn't ready for it yet. The projects like Assembly and I think one was it Mattermost or something like that. There was, but anyway, there were several, and they were actually doing things which were quite advanced and certainly far ahead of their time. So yeah, but thankfully we got the timing sort of right. I mean, 8 years of trying later, we kind of got it right.
I mean, it's I would say that everybody here can be called a veteran, because it's like there were like ups and downs in the sense. I remember, like back in the day, I still have, and we are going to use it, Data DAO, domain name. And I remember in 2017, I just wanted to start the project Data DAO, and everybody was telling to me, don't use the word DAO, don't use DAO. DAO is toxic, you ruin the project, so yeah, and I guess today also, yeah, the domain name probably appreciated a bit. So yeah, it's been all right. I remember it's actually here, like Matt and Jack, I find it also very fascinating, because it's like you said, you're coming from really different spaces, like Matt and you from the world of theoretical physics. Jack, I mean, you saying that you were in jewelry, it's a bit of an understatement, because it's like, yeah, I mean, if we look at your work,
Michael
the
Jordan played basketball too.
Yes, I would say your work is also a statement to really, I don't know, human persistence. I would be never able to just follow through that. I think it's a mega super big achievement on top of the skills and stuff.
It's just a combination of ignorance and stubbornness. That's all it is.
Yeah, and this I think this stubbornness, it's like, this is also what was quite needed to stay in the DAO space. It's
right.
Probably also one characteristic others share. So maybe we jump with we continue with the intros. I don't know, Aaron, would you be up to provide a bit of background about what you're up to? And
yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me. Great to see everybody here. It's been a while for some. So I'm Aaron, co-founder of Tribute Labs, used to be called Open Law. I did not start with theoretical physics or jewelry, but kind of started my journey from law. So before founding Tribute Labs, I did a lot in the Wikipedia ecosystem. I helped build out the for-profit version of Wikipedia and did a lot with open content, user-generated content. Had a background in law, history, and economics, so not surprisingly, loving open source collaborative tech and that background. Bitcoin tickled me in all the right places, so I kind of fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole pretty early. In 2011, I was completely geeked out on all these extensions to Bitcoin, from Color Coin, to the stuff that we saw Dan Larimer starting to propose with DAX and other things like that. Was fortunate enough to play a role helping to get everything in order around the time Ethereum launched, which was awesome. And then I'm also an academic and co-authored a book with a wonderful co-author, Primavera De Filippi, where we started to look at lots of these kind of difficult policy questions around all things crypto, including DAOs. So that always took up like quite a large mind share. And over the past 2 years, we've been just building and supporting a whole bunch of different DAOs that I think are helping to push forward the conversation, at least in the US. So really, really happy to be here. Super exciting to talk more about DAOs.
Awesome. So maybe just, you said you've been involved with a couple of DAOs. It's again a little bit quite humble statement. But maybe we just for now focus the law. What is the law? Sounds very similar to DAO.
Yeah. So I think, and I'm sure there's still maybe a little bit of PTSD around the DAO itself. I don't know how you're feeling, Griff, about that, but we saw the birth of Moloch DAO, which Amin, James Young, and others, really push forward. And I just thought it was awesome, right? Like I was so excited to see people kind of reviving the DAO concept outside of just like a platform like Aragon. And I just thought Moloch DAO was really beautiful and well done. And it felt like the ecosystem was finally ready to begin to dive into DAOs again, both because the technical tooling was better, and also I think kind of the hangover from all the drama around the DAO and the hard fork and everything else kind of softened. And so, we were fortunate enough to work with the Metacartel folks and Mean to help build Moloch V2. And the idea was a couple different teams, us and the Metacartel folks, would just try to reboot a DAO that wasn't grant giving, but tried to at least in part achieve some of the initial objectives with the DAO itself, which was to serve as a filter for the community and, to kind of identify great projects that needed support. And so we started as an experiment about 2 years ago. A whole bunch of folks kind of pooled in, including Christoph, who helped start the DAO, and a whole bunch of other people that have been in the space for a while. And we've been fortunate enough to back 100+ projects. And the DAO itself is kind of like the mother DAO. It's created and incubated a whole network of DAOs. There's 13 or so, and that's kind of running the gamut of opportunities in the crypto ecosystem, from NFTs to gaming to the metaverse to digital fashion to music. So I think all of these concepts that have been floating around our ecosystem about how we can invert models, how we can work together to pool capital and productively deploy it, we're playing a role in that, along with those great experiments that we see on like Juicebox and a whole bunch of other projects too. So super pumped to kind of press things forward and work out some of the kinks, the mechanics of getting groups to work together online.
Awesome. So also here, the DAO, was the DAO the first DAO that was regulatory compliant?
Yeah,
like
so that's
registered?
what so it's so our approach, it's a little bit like what Coinbase and some of the regulated exchanges did, which I know that there's always trade-offs, but I think those experiments are important to kind of open up more ground for everybody else. And so that's the approach that we took. So there's some trade-offs there, right? It's not open and completely permissionless, although we all wish it could be. It's limited to 100 members. But I think something that we didn't anticipate that we stumbled upon was actually having like a smaller curated group kind of cuts through the noise of what we read and process in the crypto space pretty well. It's not like exactly like wisdom of the crowds. It's like wisdom of like a more like a smaller group, and that seems to work pretty well. I think the other thing we've learned is the way people want to work together is definitely evolved over the past 2 years, and actually like figuring out how people want to work together in smaller groups, like groups of 100, makes sense to work out some of the kinks before you kind of start to get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, hopefully millions of people to work together in these structures. So it kind of serves a couple purposes that we think are important. And they're all wrapped, they're anchored in a US entity. Conversations related to that structure really started even before Ethereum launched. At some events at MIT that I was fortunate enough to participate in, along with others, like Vitalik was there and Gav and others. We started thinking about, how could you have like a DAO manage or acquire real world property? So just kind of pressing on some of that earlier thought and process that I think was floating around the time Ethereum launched.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much for that. Yes, we will get back to some of these topics. Lots of interesting stuff here. Ross, maybe a couple of words about you, DAO.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think I have. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I don't think I have quite the awesome background of coming from working alongside some pretty amazing people in the space or anything. I've been a lot more recent into the space, but I've been working at DAO for I think just coming up in a year now, and that's been my sort of main experience. And right now I'm leading our DXGov team, which is the governance squad at DXDAO. And DXDAO itself, if you haven't heard of it, has been on chain as a DAO governing ourselves in our treasury for coming up on 3 years now. And I think a few of you might know us relatively well in the time. Obviously, the origins of DXDAOs are actually built off of DAO Stack, and we've been using that technology for the whole time. So yeah, we're kind of decentralization maximalists, we like to call ourselves, and that's kind of what we like to focus on, is making new products that can kind of spread decentralization and make it more accessible, whilst not giving up on that. There's time and places for decentralization to be put to the side, but we kind of focus on, I don't know, I guess like taking things and making them more decentralized.
Awesome. So my understanding is, but please here correct me if I'm wrong. DAO was started by DAO Stack and Gnosis as a common project, and today it's a DAO on its own, where, so to speak, the parents just let it into the world to grow and
pretty much. I mean, maybe Ratan can even give a bit more context around this.
Yeah. I mean, not Martin. I mean, we talked about. I mean, we had Alchemy back there already operating, but it had still a very limited functionality. Then we started to talk about more general functionality where the governance can call any function and basically control a protocol that was not existing back then. And then we talked with Martin Koppelman from Gnosis, and he had this idea for decentralizing. If you remember back then, they had the product called DutchX. Which actually their main bottleneck to release the product was regulatory bottleneck, so they couldn't actually launch the DutchX because of regulatory reasons, and the only thing that they could do then is launch it as a DAO. So we said, okay, why don't we build this technology that the governance can call any function and control entirely the protocol? And for the next eight months or so, we worked very closely together with Gnosis. We built the technology. We also designed the cryptoeconomics, the launched everything. We also built the launch game. Basically, people got voting power in the DAO by doing all sort of activities such as locking tokens or burning tokens. Or sending tokens to the DAO. And then we launched it. But the idea from the beginning was not to be involved in it. It was really like I'm not sure if it's more like ideology or something else, but the idea was really just to let it be and see what's happening. So we launched it. We participated a little bit, but then it went quiet for about a year. It was really, really quiet. I think it was a team of, I don't know, maybe 10 or so people working very quietly and diligently. And about a year after, they launched the first, I think, token sale by a DAO, and then it spread much wider and more active, and started building their own products. We kept in touch for a couple of years, and about 2 years ago, we shifted a bit more to the impact DAO world. So then I think the connection somewhat loosened, and now we actually came back both impact, but also back with Alchemy and other tools. So it's really interesting. Actually, I really admire the DAO people, because I've been talking with a lot of people in the space. Really keep asking the same question, like why do you think is the most interesting DAO right now? And many people are answering DAO. So I think when you say decentralization Maximus, I think people really appreciate that, and it's really I agree with that.
Yeah, we've been attending. Sort of coming out of COVID, we've been re-attending conferences and stuff, and it's been really exciting. People like actually just talking to people in the space and having them be excited about the decentralization as well, because I think it often gets overlooked very easily for like the new shiny thing. It's people don't stop and think if it's actually decentralized. So yeah, and the DAO team itself is obviously kind of grown. It's expanding quite a lot. I think we're in the
how many are you right now?
I think about 35, although the number might be slightly off. But yeah, we've got a few teams, and our main purpose originally, or at least up until recently, has been building DeFi products and the like. But we've also been expanding out, obviously, in relation to this talk, more into governance and building our own tooling there.
Nice. It's really, I didn't know the story. It's really good to hear it. It's thank you for this. So our last intro, and then we can move more into freestyle. Rachel, thank you very much.
Hello.
Joining. We've also known each other now for very long, especially in crypto time. So Rachel, you're with the Dark Fight team, but here today you're also as the representative, let's say, of the Assange DAO. And It's Assange DAO. Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. So I want to mention first that I think I'm kind of the odd one out because unlike all of the other panelists, I'm not a DAO OG. I got into DAOs very late. And I actually only realized sort of that DAOs were interesting about a year ago. But since then, DAOs have become very important for my work. So on DarkFi, our first product is building support for anonymous DAOs. And we also led a very successful DAO raise for the Assange DAO, which Gregor mentioned. So this was, I guess, a month and a half ago now. We came together a few months previously, and it was actually after the free Ross DAO. So it was very much a derivative of the free Ross DAO. So for if any of you listening didn't see that one, that was a DAO that galvanized to raise capital to bid on the NFTs produced by Russ Ulbricht, the founder of Silk Road, who's been given a particularly brutal prison sentence. And when that happened and that DAO was successful, we realized that it was possible to do a similar thing for Julian Assange, who is also suffering from like intense state-led persecution. Actually, the Gabriel, who's the brother of Assange, had been speaking with Amir, who I work with on DarkFi, for years, trying to raise capital for Assange. But it wasn't until this moment, and he had also gone to several conferences, Bitcoin Miami, he was there last year, with Harry Halpin, CEO of NIM, trying to get money for people to help fund the Assange case. And it wasn't successful. So really, it was the DAO model that enabled us to get so much money toward Assange. And we raised 50 million in the space of a number of days. And this was a really important moment for me because actually Assange was the reason I got into crypto. In 2015, I read his book, The Cypherpunks, which begins with an essay. It's interviews, but it begins with an essay called A Call to Cryptographic Arms. And it's a beautiful text. I'd recommend it to everyone. And in this text, he talks about that there are two forces operated within technology. There's one force, which is about surveillance and control. And there's another, which is liberatory, and it's about empowerment, and its main tool or device is encryption. So it's really beautiful text, and reading that in 2015, it taught me about Bitcoin, but it also completely structured how I would end up seeing the crypto space ever since then. So, my concern has generally been with privacy and anonymity, although I do have some kind of exposure to like organizing, collective organizing. So in 2019, I traveled to northern Syria, to Rojava, where there's a very interesting non-state based society that's being lived there. It's basically the most radical form of direct democracy that exists at the moment. And it's offering a very interesting alternative to these kind of liberal democracies, which are predominant in the West. So that was a highly formative experience. I was there for almost a year. And while, it wasn't until much later that I realized the relevance of DAOs, I hope that like some of this experience has colored my perspective on the DAO space as well. I also wanted to mention, I forget what I wanted to mention. I think I covered a lot though.
It will come back. It's maybe here first a side comment. I would say everybody here is an OG. It's not about, like the years or just this. It's like different experiences. What I think here from knowing you all personally is, it's like you guys put the heart in it. That's, I think it's like, and here maybe we, in this sense, it's like the intent. Before we spoke with Griff, Griff mentioned how basically capital kind of in the also charity space dominates everything. But here, what we discuss, it's not about this. It's kind of in a way just turning it around and turning it into as a force for good, as in Julian's case. So, and maybe here this is exactly kind of one of the questions. It's like, how do you see DAOs and their purpose? Do DAOs need a value, the value set? It's like, do they need to subscribe to some values, or it's maybe the advantage of DAOs actually that they don't have values? It's is the community, comes the community first, and with it also the values, or can there even be a DAO without people? What would you say?
So that's a really interesting question. I also want to quickly return to the thing I forgot, which was just that I think one of the reasons why I didn't realize DAOs were interesting until much later was because DAOs in the first DAO, the DAO, it wasn't just that they were seen as like security issues could be hacked. It was also the rhetoric of the DAO, which made DAOs seem like these kind of inhuman, like purely cybernetic, essentially corporate governance structures. There was this use of language like the steadfast law of unbreakable iron code, and there was a lot of this rhetoric. And the original DAO is very different to the kind of values that we see expressed in DAOs today, in the DAO landscape today. So I think this potentially contributed to why I had a delayed response to realizing that DAOs were something interesting. But in respect to your question now, DAOs, like there is many, I think this moment in DAO history is interesting because the most kind of, we have an overrepresentation in the DAO space of idealistic or ideological sort of left-leaning collectivist projects, and less of a representation of purely corporate focused DAOs. But I think that all forms of DAOs with all kinds of values are possible and also will happen at some point. So I think that DAO itself is just like a technique. It's a type of technology that has emerged from an ideological community in the same way Bitcoin emerged from the cypherpunks. You need that kind of ideological spark to create something new. But now that the tool is available, it's a mechanism that can be adapted to all sorts of different ideological contexts. So I think we'll see DAOs representing a spectrum of values. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a tricky question, because I would say there's no right or wrong answer, and we are moving in uncharted territory in this regard. It's also, I mean, this question. So Aaron mentioned before, hinted at Griff with the DAO, and it's kind of at the end of the day, probably with the DAO and everything that was happening was kind of this value clash: is code law or not? Maybe we avoid that topic now, but it was kind of, it's like in a way what we've seen with Ethereum Classic happening, and part of the community forking off was basically just because of essentially value disagreement in this regard. So here I may be wondering, and others please jump in. It's here is maybe, well, yes, please.
I mean, I think there are values which are subjective. There are, we can argue about them. I would really prefer values which are, better for the world as a whole. But we can also argue about what is better for the world as a whole. But I think there are some specific values who are just favorable for DAOs, period. So values that promote engagement and values that promote cooperation. For example, transparency. Like if you have lack of transparency, it will reduce engagement, it will reduce cooperation in a DAO as a whole, regardless of where it points, regardless of what it does, regardless of its purpose, will just be less good or less being able of scale up. So I think, for example, transparency is really core value of a DAO. Likewise, I would say freedom of action. You can call it a duocracy, sort of like autonomy that usually comes with responsibility or accountability, leadership, entrepreneurship mind. Again, these are kind of values which are promote engagement, promote doing in an environment which is very open, and I think are critical. For example, values such as maximal culture, so that or very defined purpose and strong culture, such that people which are alike are being magnetized in. But then minimal culture in terms of rules or bureaucracy. Like if there is a lot of politics or rules or bureaucracy, then again, engagement becomes very hard because you're not sure what you can do or what you cannot do and how to do that. So as you minimize bureaucracy but maximize coherence, again, you get more cooperation, more engagement. So I think there are some values which are special, which are just max powering DAOs, and more so when we'll get more and more scalable DAOs, which we're not yet there, but I think we are getting there.
Yeah.
So like right now, the biggest DAOs in the world, they have, I would say, probably 50 contributors, like full-time contributors, such as DXDAO is maybe 35. I think Yearn DAO is about 50. So these are like the biggest DAOs right now. But we're anticipating, and probably we'll talk about that in the next, I don't know, maybe in the next few questions, we're anticipating the phase where millions of people can actually, or, to begin with, thousands of people can really collaborate and we can form, virtual states. That will shift the world. But that requires more tooling, and I think, and it requires also the right values. So I think it's really important question.
I think those are great points, Matan, to go back to what you were saying about whether or not DAOs need a special purpose. I do think it's helpful, right? I don't think it's mutually exclusive. You can have one that's a little bit more inchoate, but it's helpful to have a purpose. And I think that that's one of the meta trends, is that people who are interested in a particular topic, that could be something that's more on the political side of the spectrum, like what Rachel was talking about, or charity-based, like what we're seeing with Ukraine DAO or some earlier grant-giving DAOs, or it could be about a specific topic, like what we've been focused on, which is digital art, right? There's a lot of people that are geeked on that. They're getting to work together to express their passion. And I think that's because a lot of people misunderstand, at least in my opinion, what Ethereum actually is, which is a coordination engine. And these tokens are really just shelling points, which just serve as a place for all the people that are interested in a particular topic to self-organize around. But just to underline what Matan said, I think that is absolutely true. Like, transparency, minimizing bureaucracy, keeping it flat, aspiring towards it being leaderless doesn't mean that somebody can have a prominent voice, but not like a formal, like elected leader, I think is helpful. Things that we've seen that are counterintuitive in our DAOs, which are pretty active. Like we had a DAO-wide call in Flamingo right before this. I think like 50 out of the 70 folks joined it on a weekly basis. So it's pretty intensely followed. It just, when you start adding those political dimensions, like what Matan was mentioning, it actually dissuades people from participating. So lots of DAOs want to add hierarchy. They want to add compensation, salaries, these like legacy concepts. And what happens is it just looks exactly like a corporation. At the end of the day, there's like a small group of people at the top, and then there's a whole bunch of salaried people underneath, and a lot of people are not participating. So I don't know the answer to that yet, but I found that personally pretty surprising. But I do think there was a lot of wisdom in what you said there, Matan. I think it was very well said.
One of the big questions with mission, vision, values, which I think most DAOs need to really succeed in the long run, because it really unites everybody's forces and cuts scope a little bit, which is very healthy. But the challenge is, when do you create them, right? Like sometimes it's actually better to start without them clearly defined. In fact, most of the time, if you're really trying to DAO like the real, really decentralized way, you want those mission, vision, values to come from the community itself. So that way anyone feels like they could engage with it, and also they feel included in the process of creating it. Otherwise, you end up with these weird dynamics where there's the people who started the DAO and they moved the first chess pieces. And so they know what the strategy was and why they made those decisions. And they're kind of stuck in this place where, well, their strategic opinion matters because they move pieces in a certain way. So if you're starting a DAO fresh and you don't have a company that already, like Gitcoin, for instance, I mean, they're doing a great job, but they're handicapped because, well, they had a company for 3 years, 4 years, and that had a CEO and all these people that made certain strategic moves. And now they're doing the best that they can to decentralize, but you can't avoid the cult of personality and having a few people at the top, as Aaron was saying. So in an ideal world, if you're just going to start a DAO, don't start with you start with a vague mission, vision, values, of course, so that you can recruit people. But then once you have a way for tokenized governance, ideally with reputation, instead of just tokenizing right away, allow the community itself to vote and determine what its mission, vision, values are, because it's such a critical piece of any DAO.
So how, if I can follow up here, how does this happen? This seems to me actually quite a complex task. And Jack, I think you also raised a hand, right?
I think I was just giving applause to something that
okay, all
somebody
right,
was saying previously. I think that these are, it's all, as this is a very boring answer, but I think it's usually true that context is hugely important. What might make sense for one type of thing, for you to start off with it being maximally decentralized and like as fluffy as you can, might make sense in one context, but in another, like you might be better off starting with a smaller, more directed group that are able, and then kind of gradually building over time, but with intentionality, like knowing where you want to get to and what kind of culture you want the organization to have, so that you don't find yourself in the position of where eventually you've got like a de facto hierarchical traditional startup with some kind of DAO dust sprinkled over the top, which I think is probably it's the
tricky. It's the best dust, Jack. DAO dust.
I mean, this Jack, this reminds me of your article way back. It was it also influenced me quite a lot. I think it was called True DAO,
right?
Where you already addressed this. Basically.
Yeah, well, that was kind of a reaction to the DAO at the time, where I got to be honest, I felt a bit butthurt by the fact that they called themselves the DAO, which like just took it off the table for everybody else to be anything that's anything less than anything more than a subset of that. Of course, things have changed now, but obviously the DAO had a limited range of things that it could do, and it was not, as I viewed it, suitable for the kinds of organizations that I envisaged being possible eventually, which was that you could have the day-to-day operations of an organization that would be able to do the same thing as any corporation that exists right now, but to do so in a way where none of the participants need to know or trust anybody else. So that, like, I viewed like the big picture governance as being kind of like the accumulation of a lot of small picture stuff that's going on, rather than it being necessarily such like a top-down decision to fund X, and then everything that happens in X actually takes place off chain, but rather you can kind of keep track of everything and have everything transparently organized, coordinated, and compensated via a DAO.
And just to defend the name, the DAO, it was a huge mistake, and it wasn't intended to be named that. We just died after 3 weeks. The goal was to actually change the name later, and the DAO would decide its own name, right?
But then it stuck because it's a very catchy name.
And this has happened to me a few times. I actually think that this is a place for centralization. Like, don't allow your DAO to name itself later. If the DAO can change its name later if it wants, but like start with what you plan on using. Don't ever start with the name you don't like, because it will bite you.
I think the move deserves a branding award on some marketing festival or conference, because from the branding perspective, it was the move for the DAO, you know. So.
Yeah. But Gregor, to your question about like these community values, and I'm sure Griff and Jack and Matan and Rachel, you can, and Ross, you guys can all attest to this. I do think putting in planning related to it off the bat is helpful, right? Like it's an entirely separate skill set. I think many developers look at DAOs, they're trying to build amazing tools, but it's really about coordination, and you can't just coordinate humans with really nifty tools, right? There's also these like soft cartilage pieces that you need to fill the gaps in. And I think that that's what's going to differentiate over time. It's that community building. It's really focusing on coordination much more so than just tools. And I think that that's just a new skill set, right? Just like we saw different jobs and roles like emerge as the internet matured. I think as DAOs mature, these like community facilitators or folks that have expertise in terms of how to operate in a more open-ended fashion probably will become increasingly cherished and valued. Because I've been fortunate enough to just look across like at least 12 different communities. I think there are some commonalities, things that we learned that work better than others, but there's a lot that we're still learning from others. Like, Jack, I know in Colony you added this like default to action unless you veto type mechanic, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. Other folks are thinking about different ways to, incentivize participation. So I think eventually we'll get some answers on how to do that well, but we're still kind of at the early days. So I don't think we all know exactly what the right way is to like launch a DAO that's going to be like effective. I will say that the just last point, and then I'll stop. Lots of DAOs that I think we haven't seen that much activity. You just see that the teams behind it may be amazing software developers, like complete rock stars in that realm, but didn't put that much thought into how the DAO itself should operate and how the governance system should operate. And that's I think limited their ability to really lean into their community, unfortunately, which makes sense, right? They could be genius developers, just not that great at that stuff. So,
and it's a hard task, but I have to push back on the idea of needing a core group to plan things in advance, because like I think that's okay if your DAO is really focused on trying to create revenue streams and like be more of an organization or more of a corporate style DAO, and then it's fine. I think it's cool. If you want your DAO to become more of like a purpose-driven economy, then it ends up with challenging side effects. And I would say that almost all DAOs start right now with a core group making a lot of plans in the beginning, but then that handicaps that crew that's making those decisions, because either they're stuck in this place where they're not even allowed to put their ideas out there because everyone will just say yes, or they step aside and just watch, and they're like, oh, that's not what I was planning on doing, or they even just leave. And a lot of the DAOs that are really decentralized, like Bitcoin, for instance, I'd consider DAO, the leaders just left and now it's on its own, and that's not really good for a DAO either. So I don't think it's wrong to do some planning in advance on how to decentralize, right? Of course, and follow best practices that exist. But strategic planning for the DAO and how it wants to achieve its mission, I think it's better to exit to the community right away and create some kind of reward system so that people can earn a voice, and then move on and allow that voice to be heard, and allow proposals to come from the edges without like this kind of secret behind the scene cultural and social centralization that kind of approve the decisions before they go to a vote.
Yeah, so I mean, Griff, hopefully that you didn't read my comments that way. I completely agree with that. I think it's like setting up more like the core objective, pushing it forward, but then knowing that you're going to recede to the background. I actually think this is what ETH did well. I also consider Ethereum to be at least DAO-like, but Vitalik, Gav, a whole bunch of folks were obviously around thinking about what Ethereum should look like, but as it matured, as it launched, they pressed to the edges or have exited, like we've seen in other communities too. So, yeah.
Yes, it's I mean, it's a very interesting topic. Kind of the question that also pops up is, what are the limits of the DAOs today? Because I would say to some extent, if the mission and the tasks are well defined, like in a game with a clear feedback system, it's a lot easier to maybe in that way that can be very purposeful DAOs targeted at one thing. On the other side, it's like the things that DAOs Tech and Colony are trying to achieve, which is this, how it was said before, millions will join DAOs, and millions of people joining in one place, it's messy by default because we humans are messy. And I can imagine that this can also present like really, really big challenges.
Yeah.
All large organizations are messy as well, right? My co-founder actually left us in 2020 to go and work for the enemy. He went from Web3 to Google, believe it or not. And he's always been a huge fan of Google and like his view of the way things work in there. But when he actually got onboarded and embedded into the teams, he was just completely shocked. Because he says it's a total shit show. It's absolute chaos inside Google. People don't really know what's going on. There's a huge amount of time and energy wasted on all sorts of things. And so I think that's just a fact of growing to large organizations where you want people to have autonomy, which is one of the cultural goals that they have within that organization. So I think you've got either autonomy and a degree of chaos and mess, or you've got a lot of control, and therefore things have to go slower, but for a different reason. But perhaps kind of more orderly.
I totally agree, and I think we are much more early than it usually thought. I think we are. I'm betting that in 2022, everything that will happen will overshadow, everything that happened before. And when you talk about scale, indeed, there is a lot to be done to enable such scales. And I think you're also right that we are missing, for example, structures. Like right now, every DAO that you see is just one monolithic container, and that's definitely not how millions of people are gonna organize. I think millions of people are gonna organize in containers that look more like web of organs rather than a single container. So, for example, this is just one critical feature I think that will evolve, and I'm also betting that we'll already gonna see web of organs this year. I think some other keys are more automated incentives, basically making it much easier to participate, much easier to engage and contribute value and receive value back. So yeah, I think we are missing much of the keys to make a much more scalable and organized, but not organized in a way that is structured, like in a rigid structure, like in an organization, you really build, skeleton. I don't think structure in that sense, but structure more in an emergent sense, like allowing structure to emerge and make contextually sense.
Yes.
I'm going to jump in.
Yes,
that's fine. Yeah. Sorry, I've been like itching to speak because I'm really happy you brought up this this topic of limitations, because there's one that I see very clearly, and it's when we spoke about values in the previous question, almost every person mentioned transparency as a core value. And in general, when you read about DAOs, transparency is presented as like their most compelling feature. But to use language that actually Matan offered to us, he said the two values of the DAOs are transparency and freedom of action. I think that was put very nicely. But I would argue that there are times when transparency restricts freedom of action. And in the Assange DAO, we felt this very strongly because firstly, if all of your transactions are public and you're sending capital to free someone like Julian Assange, who's like an enemy of the state, like you're potentially making yourself an enemy of the state. So it's a transaction that you'd really want to, if possible, anonymize. And then that's just the beginning of the DAO, right? But all of the operations of the DAO, especially if, like, again, with the example of Assange DAO, the kind of accepted goal is to free Assange by all means necessary. You could see how the set of possible actions that the DAO could take would be highly limited if all of these actions are on ClearNet, plain text Ethereum. So I'm curious, like, to the rest of participants, like, do you also encounter this this problem with the fully transparency centric paradigm of Ethereum, and do you see the need for more customizable and anonymous and privacy focused DAO solutions, which is what we're trying to build? And it's not to say that everything should be hidden. For example, a DAO could decide that they want to make their treasury public, but they may also decide that the participants are hidden, and they could make other kinds of structural decisions in terms of what information is given and what information is hidden, with the goal of protecting DAO participants. So yeah, I put that to the group.
Yeah,
Awesome question. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I think there's use cases where you want privacy and use cases where you want transparency, and it just depends on what the DAO. Obviously, Assange DAO is like a very clear example of where privacy would be appreciated. I think in other use cases, though, when you're talking, I guess more from my experience with things where we have reputation and like non-transferable tokens, where it actually, you want to know who is voting on certain things when there's like technical knowledge involved in decisions. Having that knowledge be public is also very important. So yeah, I think there's a bit of like a cost benefit thing, and like it depends on the case there. But obviously, it's difficult to do the privacy part. It's not simple.
It's a very good question, and yeah, I actually also had it in mind to ask. Thank you, Rachel. I would here add. I would extend it also. I would even complicate it a little bit more. And Matan, you hinted already a little bit about this web of DAOs. So also my question would be here, will we see DAOs operate among each other, like different DAOs speaking to other DAOs, and maybe one DAO is just like very good at something and the other DAO at the other something else? So privacy and interoperability. Will we see that kind of future? And maybe here we can also extend. It's like the time is just flying by, and I think we are all itching also for the question like, what's next? What's coming next? And given that we have so many amazing DAO builders here, I think we can even set the intent of what kind of DAO future we would like to see. So how do you see the future?
I think you said it. I think interoperability, I think, is really key. So, and I think that's, I mean, I think that's the future, but I think it's also what we need to intend for. So if we build a lot of small components that really integrate, interoperate, and you can talk about interoperability at the application layer, but you can also talk interoperability at the organizational layer. So, or different organs that maybe are originally originated from different two DAOs could really co-create and do relationship or business together. I think we're going to see more and more of these complex structures that resemble more of organisms rather than organizations, and I really think we can intend for that. Like we can build. I call that DAO 2.0 basically. I think we are marching there, and I think we see that already happening. Like we see more builders building more smaller components and more reusable components and more integration of components that come from different builders. So that's what I would anticipate for the next year.
Okay. Maybe here just a follow-up question, Matan. At the beginning, you mentioned that there's a lot of focus on impact. What kind of impact would you like to see?
I think it's a critical question because, to my opinion, actually, I mean, DAO is so important because I think that it's critical for the survival of human species. I think the human species right now, humanity has a global and complex problems that none of the existing toolings can solve. No teams or institutions or free markets, and all of the combinations of the above can solve those complex problems. And I think only complex organisms going to solve these complex problems. We can also discuss why they can do so, but I think it's actually critical that we form global alliances that can fight climate, for example, or can align incentive better, or can promote peace, or can stop war. And I think these are really critical for the next decade. So that's the kind of impact I would anticipate. I think climate DAO, or some sort of climate DAO, could solve climate, but I don't think any nation would do so. And I personally also believe that we're going to see a global economy DAO. So one big DAO, or maybe a couple of big DAOs, but really one big DAO that has the power to basically impact governments, just as corporation can do today, or empires can do today, but I think much larger than them, and can promote, basically align the collective interest of the global society or of the planet.
I don't know what kind of tacos I ate in Mexico City, but I'm feeling very disagreeable today. I hope to see the exact opposite. As opposed to seeing large global structures, I would like to see competing microeconomies to provide public services, and actually start replacing the monolithic government process of where government controls the public goods vertical, each public goods vertical they decide to participate in their little region that they have, control over the people. I would like to see each one of those public services actually be replaced by competing microeconomies that are bottom-up oriented. And then when we can actually compete to provide public services, then we'll get the public services that people actually want. That's what I like to see in DAOs. And I also, to get there, I feel like we need better reward systems that are giving good feedback within the DAOs.
Yeah, maybe
can I just comment? I actually totally agree with you, Griff. I think from a service standpoint, I think we should have competition of small DAOs. But I think eventually, if we want to take care of the planet, I think those DAOs would have to have a minimal common factor to agree about. So that's what I mean about like the interoperable space would have to be agreed about.
It's why we need the DAO name, Griff.
Right. Yeah, give it back to us. But I think it's going to be both, right? Like it's just a Coasian theory, right? Transaction costs go down, right? So you can make smaller groups and all these different microeconomies, things that people couldn't do before. And then at the same time, it's easier for large groups to coordinate too. It's like how we saw with information on the internet. There's like massive packets of information, like a video file that we may consume. And then at the same time, there's small packets of information, like a tweet being an example that we also consume, and it gets kind of rebundled up. So I think it's all there. Yeah, Jack, I know you wanted to say something, but just wanted to be the peacemaker there. You guys are all right. Everybody's right.
No, I was on a complete earlier point. I think that to this point, it's all a question of what scale you're looking at these things from, right? I think who was it I was speaking to recently? That was it. It was about like the Ethereum ecosystem in general. Like if you look at that the right way, you can kind of see that as being a DAO as well. There's this kind of large global scale DAO where ETH is the token that ties it all together and attracts value from all of the separate competing sub projects that are working independently and competing with one another. So yeah, it's all a question of scale. On the point of privacy, if I could just jump back to that one,
please.
And transparency, like I don't really resonate with like transparency as an inherent good. I think transparency can be enormously complicating, even when you're not looking at contexts in which there's really sensitive information, such as in the Assange DAO case. But I think it's an incredibly nuanced thing, and there's certain contexts in which it's really much more useful to have the information private, even within an open organization. I think voting is a perfect example of this. Commonly, we've seen voting happening in DAOs be a very transparent thing, where all of the votes are recorded on chain in real time and are visible to everybody in real time. But that has the consequence of people being able to see what is happening whilst the vote is ongoing. And that's not something we do in any democracy, because it can't help but influence what the outcome of the vote will be. We've seen it happen many times in the past. EIP 999 was a good example of this. Was it 999? Anyway, the one where Parity got their funds lost. And a whole bunch of people were like reaching out, trying to say, can you help with this? But we just had the DAO hard fork, and people were terrified of another contentious rift in the Ethereum community. And I and many others that I know decided not to participate in that, because we could see the direction the wind was blowing, and we could see that it was going to end up being super contentious, and didn't want to leave it being like a 5149 kind of deal. And then you've got things like coercion and stuff, where you really want to be able to have things like receipt-free voting, where nobody can tell who voted or what they voted on, or you want to be able to tell that perhaps they voted. You want to be able to ideally know the outcome, but not what people voted or who they were. Sorry, I'm jumbling things up a bit there, but
no. I think this is mega relevant, because actually the follow-up question here would be, in a way, to Griff, sorry to put you on the spot here, but you are also part of the ENS DAO, and it had a contentious vote just these days, and Griff.it was among, like the chart there. So how did it make you feel?
I mean, because I'm a delegate, I think there's a different situation, right? I think it's important to have transparent voting from delegates if you're delegating, right? But I'm sure a lot of people who aren't delegating don't feel the same way and would like their voice to be heard. And sometimes transparency, I mean, come on, there's a reasons that in the normal world votes are not transparent, and it's anonymous, and you don't know the results until the end. This is just a bad voting structure. And in the end, like, I think for the Brantley vote, there was probably no other way. But I would like to see a day where voting just happens by default. Like I would love to see a world where there's that we use the same tools that figure out what kind of advertising to show you, right? Where they're tracking your inputs and your forum posts and things like that. Maybe you have your own little voting bot on your DApp node, and it's you control, of course, your data, but like it defaults votes for you based off of all the data it's grabbing and is understanding how you would vote. And then you can tune it by like going back and actually like managing to make sure that it knows that you would really vote this way on these different things. That way you're because it's really about individual signals being aggregated to an outcome. And it shouldn't have to be this whole like, oh, you got 7 days, you better make a political stance to the entire community about how you feel, blah, blah, blah. It should be easier, and the UX could be better.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. I will push back on that point. I just feel like that is like some Ray Dalio hellscape that I just don't want to be a part of, where I'm getting algorithmically and now, analyzed, tracked completely. I don't want that.
On your own server that you control?
I think the over quantification of things is like humanity is lost at that point, right? You just become basically like an input in a machine. And I understand the appeal, and I'm not saying there may not be a balance there, but I do worry about that a little bit, but maybe I'm just being a little boomer here. But
I imagine the sort of existential angst of sort of second guessing yourself as to what the AI thinks you think.
It sounds like
who's smarter, me or the AI?
Yeah,
must be AI.
Is this really what I think?
I guess the challenge is like, I myself find myself in so many DAOs, I can't keep up, right?
Yeah.
And yet I want my signal to be processed. So how do I find some aid in managing that?
Sounds like you need to delegate yourself to someone else.
Or what if I could delegate it to something that could gather all of my inputs that when I make a forum post or when I'm talking to someone on DMs, even if it's a private DM, since I would control all of my data, it could make its best guess, and then I go back and tune it. as time goes on?
Well, it's definitely very, very interesting question. It's like I've been dealing with this question in terms like how can like anonymized data markets enable universal basic income, and it's basically it can come to simple questions like today when we go to a website, there's like this cookie consent form or GDPR consent form, and there's like this fatigue by the user. So it would be good to delegate, for example, privacy settings. I would be totally cool, to delegate my privacy settings to Rachel. And I know it's like what passes with Rachel is good with me, but it's a very thin line here how we approach the technology. It can be, it can very quickly shift, I guess. But this is something. It's also here maybe opening up another topic. It's DAOs are unstoppable. So what are the dangers of DAOs in this sense? Can DAOs go wrong? And we have, as Jack mentioned, Black Mirror, like a Black Mirror episode where it's millions of people joining a DAO and just one collective will and group psychology kicking in, and I don't know, we get like World War or something.
Are we talking about dark DAOs? Is that what we're going to now?
Maybe.
Yes. The dark side of DAOs? Yes. Yeah. This is going to be great.
I mean,
even more benignly than that, like where are DAOs even, like this is perhaps a slight immediate tangent, but it was always amusing to me that what was it called? The Dutch X exchange couldn't be done legally or officially by Gnosis. So it was done by a DAO for obvious reasons. But if you really think about it, it's because it makes it even more unclear really who is liable for anything going on there. So we can muddy things up by introducing something which actually introduces even more uncertainty and complexity to the situation.
Honestly, in public discourse, there is a DAO that is already out of control, and it would be Bitcoin, at least, yeah. Right? Like the mining rewards scale linearly with the price, and so if you end up having $1 million Bitcoin, then you're giving away $6.25 million every 10 minutes, and then it is incentivized to actually run that much worth of electricity. So now I'm not going to say this is good or bad. Right now, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but like it definitely could be and is becoming more of a big deal. And I do think that it's worth giving people the agency to say maybe this isn't okay. And I think if Bitcoin did become such a problem, people would actually sell it. And it would be something that like society at large would be like, well, this might be too big of a problem and I don't want a hand in it. And actually, I might think that the rest of the world might not have a hand in it. And so even strategically for my own financial purposes, I should probably sell. And I think that we'll see these kind of market dynamics that push back on DAOs that aren't providing value for society in a way, or are providing a disservice to society in a way that doesn't right now, Bitcoin, I think, provides more of a service to society than a disservice, but there's resonance and dissonance, right? And I think eventually when a DAO's dissonance from the global community is higher than its resonance, it'll have pushback.
Or when the flipping happens.
Yeah. I mean, but I'm sure DAOs, like, I think all tech, it's pretty neutral, right? And I think crypto in general is just illegal. Like, it doesn't have a moral stance. It's just tools. So I'm assuming we'll see lots of positive use cases and possibly negative use cases too, right? Especially as privacy preserving technology improves. I think when you think about what DAOs do well, or what ETH does well, it's one, pool capital, two, it's coordination. So right now people are doing that to, make a difference, for a charitable purpose, make a difference when it comes to, certain people that people feel like have been wronged, or to make a political stance. But at the same time, like a group of hackers who are really good at staying anonymous could use that as a way to coordinate their activity, right? Or if you can pull together, $700+ million, which I don't think is unreasonable if you scale out DAOs in 5 to 10 years, you could fund a rebellion, right? Like you can do a lot with $700 million, or you could fund like a blockbuster movie or some like high production, media. So I don't know which way it branches, but I'm assuming it will branch in both directions. And I think the right framing, and something I do, is you just kind of 10x where we are now. So if we're seeing charitable DAOs that are collecting $7 to $10 million, assume in like 5 years it'll be 70 million, assume in like 10 to 20 years it'll be 700 million. And that's kind of where your mind gets fucked. And that's probably the most interesting place to kind of think about, at least in my mind. So
I think DAO can go wrong in 3 ways in some sense. DAOs can have bad purpose, let's say a decentralized terror organization, which I think surely could happen and probably will happen. And we'll need to find ways to decentralize police them. So just bad intention. I think DAOs can have, well, maybe not bad intention, but can externalize harm, such as just DAOs which just keep growing and externalizing all harm to the environment. And in a way, I think Bitcoin is an example. I agree with Griff, but we can see, I think, much worser ones. And then I think the third category is that just things go wrong. I don't know, AI, DAOs integrated with AI, bad crypto economy, complete collapse, the DAO style. But imagine the DAO style collapse when it's a global economy size DAO. So I think these kind of 3 scenarios where things can go wrong. And I think probably we'll see some things go wrong. It will be unlikely that everything will go right, but hopefully we'll have enough big DAOs which are stable and strong to counterbalance the things that go wrong. I think it's really important that we form strong DAOs that are doing good. It's really critical.
Yes, I would say it can be very quickly. Also, if we speak about the public opinion and all this can change around. So providing positive use cases, in a way here, it's also, I'm not sure, I've been usually the proponent that technology is neutral. But when we speak about decentralized technology, I'm not sure if this holds true. I think it's like, by default, decentralized tech is already in itself a statement, a critique to the existing system, to the structures. So it's already being here, already even using Bitcoin instead of the dollar is a statement. So it's great. It's great to hear how the intents we are setting out here. It's also, it's a lot of these things are also mind-boggling. It's like if all DAOs are connected and they interoperate, are we speaking about one DAO or about millions of DAOs?
I think it's going to be tens of millions, right? If you believe the thesis that DAOs are the organizational form for the internet, and I tend to think it is. I mean, if you look across the globe, right, there's millions upon millions of corporations, LLCs, partnerships, whatever people want to call it. Assuming that this is the most efficient way to coordinate and deploy capital, there's no reason why in 20+ years it's not going to be the same thing for DAOs. And the first DAO to DAO transactions are occurring, like we on the Lao side, like we directly backed PyDAO just with smart contract based transactions. It's a little janky to set it up. It's a little bit too expensive, right? It's all the normal critiques of ETH, but again, like assume 10x lower fees, 10x faster throughput on blockchains, and I think you can kind of see that world manifesting. So
yes,
it's good.
Let's manifest it. Yes, Rachel.
I just wanted to really quickly respond, and then I will stop. But
awesome. No, please do.
No, it was just what you said, Gregor. Actually, when you mentioned this idea that like somehow there's this innate politics to decentralized technology, which I think is a really interesting point, and I kind of agree and disagree at the same time. Which is like I agree insofar as like these are tools that emerge from a political movement and were built toward a political goal, which endows them with a certain political character. However, I still think these tools are like perfectly liable to capture and to use by, as I said earlier, a spectrum of different values. And so it's not, I don't believe the tool in itself which will determine the kind of political direction. It's rather the values that are like put into directing that tool. And so that's why I think for the future of DAOs to be something which in line with what some of the people in this call are signaling, it's not enough to have simply a technological revolution. It's, it must happen in tandem with, alongside a similar revolution at the level of mindset. So people need to, if they want to change how they coordinate or how they reason about topics, they have to also change their own philosophy, develop their own ideology. So I think for truly interesting political DAOs to emerge, the focus is on tooling, but also on politically radicalizing their participants.
This is thank you very much for raising this point. It was actually what I already wanted to ask Griff before when we were chatting. It's kind of what I'm wondering is if maybe one of the biggest obstacles to bigger adoption, if we speak now also about the DAO space, are actually that we need to some extent dismantle certain social constructs. It's in a way, we've seen this already with the cryptocurrencies. Like when I spoke with people, there were so many saying what do you mean it's money? Because their strongly held belief was money can be just minted by the state. So it's like here, DAOs, Griff, when you say you can donate and even get money back, it's like this is kind of cognitive dissonance thing for the normies world, so to speak. Jack, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I think personally, I've never approached DAOs as or any of my thinking, at least around them, from a political or particularly ideological perspective exactly, but more from a pragmatic perspective, that if we want to have internet native organizations, and one of the inherent characteristics of the web is that people are pseudonymous, then any solution to that problem would have to have certain characteristics. And that I think that, and those perhaps just happen to align with certain philosophies. But I don't think they're inherent to them. And I feel like a lot of the way people are thinking and talking about DAOs now is very similar to the way people were thinking and talking about Ethereum right at the beginning. But over time, it kind of becomes apparent that it ends up getting used in ways that are kind of more politically neutral and that are just useful. Well, it's just because they're useful. They provide some new utility, new ways of doing things. And I think that DAOs won't really require any kind of radical shift in philosophy or shift in political leaning, but rather will just be adopted just because they're so much easier. Like if hundreds of thousands or millions of companies are created every year, that pales into insignificance compared to the number of internet communities, WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, subreddits, all of that kind of thing that get created every year. And I think that's what we'll see, but they'll have the massive exponential increase in power that they can control funds. And that enables them to really do stuff rather than just talk about stuff.
Yes, this is, yeah, totally agree. I think looking at the time, unfortunately, we have way over time, and I know everybody here is mega busy, so I shouldn't hold you too much also here. And I think, yes, it's very well rounded of, like you put it, Jack. So maybe just for the end, it's those who are now pumped, that we want to be part of a DAO, we want to do something. It's I would here concretely ask everybody, how can people join your DAO? What would be the first step you would suggest? Matan, you mentioned alchemy before. We didn't really point out alchemy is the framework to build DAOs, right? So basically, what are this is the time for the really for your project, so to speak. Like, how can people get involved? How can they join DAOs, etc.? So
I would say join any DAO. I mean, people are welcome to join. I mean, actually, we are in DAOstack now. In these very days, are in transition to DAOify DAOstack. So DAOstack is taking actually 1st of April, the first step, and firstly decentralization more internally, and then thereafter externally. So soon you can just join DAOstack DAO, but I would really say just join any DAO. It doesn't really matter. And more so, I would say, just join a Discord, join, or somewhere. And I also say I would also call to the respected people here, but also a wider space. I think it's really time to form wider DAOs. So more DAOs that put more emphasis on the interoperability of those different tools, and I bet that those DAOs will show up in next year or so. So joining those DAOs and just picking up a project, building a primitive, another DAO primitive, making sure that DAO primitive is interoperable with other tools, co-designing the right primitives, co-working on the important tools. I totally agree with Griff that rewarding systems are critical. Interoperability, organ interoperability are critical. And more stuff. So I think there is so much to do. Just chiming in somewhere and starting building.
Griff,
I think Matan nailed it just in terms of how to participate. Just hop in.
all right.
Yeah, go for it, Rachel.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know if people were saying that Matan nailed it for everyone. But I was going to mention that if you want to join the DARKFi community, we're not a DAO yet, but we will be very soon. So it's a cool opportunity to be part of a very, very early DAO. We're currently organizing on Elements. The server is Matrix, elements.darkfi, .dark.fi. But we will be transitioning soon to our own peer-to-peer chat. And that chat which we're now building is going to have inbuilt support for DAOs. So you're going to be able to kind of like old school IRC, message people, and with simple commands like vote on topics like /vote, the same way you would do /join an IRC channel. So we're trying to make integrated social tooling, decentralized, anonymous, peer-to-peer. So yeah, please join. We'd love to have you.
Awesome. Yeah.
Wow, that's super cool.
Sorry.
Okay, that's super cool because you're probably the only one not on Discord. And I tried to push the Riot, formerly Riot, now Element bandwagon, but it didn't happen, sadly. But yeah, Discord. If you want to join DAOs, just get on Discord. Get on crypto Twitter as well, and just figure out who your value aligned with and jump into their Discord. If you like token engineering, then join the Token Engineering Commons. That's one of my favorite DAOs. That's discord.tcommons.org. If you think that we need to build the future of giving and change the way philanthropy works, then join Giveth. That's discord.giveth.io. And then of course there's DAppNode, and there's all sorts of cool DAOs, Gitcoin, Bright ID. There's so many, OneHive. There's so many cool DAOs that I'm way too deep into. But that really it's what DAO works for you. And once you get in, provide value. If you have a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit and you're ready to break out of that corporate top down telling you what to do and more bottom up bureaucratic approach, then you'll succeed in DAOs. That's the secret sauce. You just have to start providing value. And even if the reward system in that DAO isn't up to snuff, the people who manage value creation and are trying to do this, you will end up being brought in. They will hire you however that ends up being, because everyone wants contributors to kind of rise into the community. This is something that every DAO dreams of happening. So if you can come in with agency and start providing value that is flowing with the rest of the team that's in the DAO, you will succeed.
Awesome. Ross, maybe anything?
Yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, I'd say just about like what's going on about DAO. Just to finish things off, I guess kind of the opposite of what DAOstack's doing, where they had the framework and they're now becoming a DAO. We're kind of the DAO that's learned everything we have, not everything we have to learn, but we've learned a lot. And we're now creating the frameworks for other people to start building and just creating some like different governance systems. And I think in the space you'll see, maybe if you're thinking about looking into DAOs, but you don't necessarily love the way a lot of them operate right now, there'll be a lot of exciting things coming down the road, not just from DAO, but from other people in the space, building new systems and building different ways of operating. So keep your eyes out, open for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Jack, I think we're missing your suggestion.
Sure. So just as to how to get involved with DAOs, I actually think that's a bit of a difficult challenge that a lot of people encounter right now. But I think key to it is understanding yourself. If you can understand who you are and what you're good at and what value you can offer to whichever organizations you wish to join, whether it's DAO or not, when you are approaching a DAO, you need to be quite forward about bringing that up. And then if you know that, then identify what within the DAO you think is not being done as well as you believe it could be done, and then just start doing it. And as Griff said, it will be noticed and it will be recognized and it will be appreciated and ultimately compensated. Yeah, and if people want to know more about what we do at Colony, which is another DAO framework, you just go to colony.io and you can find all the links to get to the Discord and everything else from there.
And also here, we can mention, Jack, that it's actually very easy to spin up DAO on Colony, right?
Yeah, right. It takes about 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Doesn't cost anything, more or less.
It's thank you, everybody. Maybe yeah, I hope that maybe we can review these intents in a year or on one of the next hackathons, and that we set the right intents, and hopefully also this talk today and the video of it, we definitely plan to have this video as part of this, let's say, onboarding video series for DAOists. So let's hope for the best, and excited to see millions of people joining DAOs and being the force for good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Gregor. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Gregor.